Welcome, everyone. My name is Sharon Terry, and I'm the President and CEO of Genetic Alliance. And I'm really delighted today to welcome you all to a webinar on the language we use around disability, and particularly focused on research that Megan Weibel is going to be doing from her program in genetic counseling at UNC. And we are really delighted to have her bring this topic forward right now, because we're in the midst of launching a Burden of Disease and Living with Disease series that will be rolled out over 2023. And it will have a number of research components. So not only the educational pieces, but also the research pieces as well. And so without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Megan.
Thank you so much, Sharon. Let me get my screen shared. Let's see how we're doing here. You would think I would be a pro at this by now, but it always takes me just a second. Okay.
Looks good.
Hopefully everyone is seeing good things. And I just also want to make sure that y'all can see the captions.
Yes, that looks like it's working very well.
Okay, fantastic. Okay, great. So like Sharon said, my name is Megan Weibel. My pronouns are she, her, and I am a second-year genetic counseling student at UNC Greensboro. And as part of my master's degree, I am working on a capstone research project exploring disability language preferences among patients and advocates. So I am very honored to be sharing that research with y'all today and sort of pulling a chair up to the table and sitting down with y'all to have a conversation about this area in disability issues. Let's see if my slides will advance. There we go. So really my goals for today are to introduce myself a little bit more, make sure that y'all know the person behind the research, and share some background that has gone into my research thus far and our plans for the study moving forward. I have time at the end for Q&A, but I would love to not talk to myself for this whole time. You are more than welcome to interrupt me, ask questions, throw comments and questions in the chat. So please feel free to do so. Before I get started, I also wanted to provide a visual description of myself. I am a mid-20s white woman. I have light brown hair. I wear glasses, and I am currently wearing like a burnt orange turtleneck. Alrighty, so I have to say that so much of my practice and my research and my goals beyond school into my career as a genetic counselor has been colored by my own experience with a genetic condition, and I would be remiss if I did not share a little bit of that story. I am trying to keep it as short as possible, but as I'm sure y'all know, we could talk all day about this stuff, but we can sort of start from the beginning. I was born rather premature on January 10th, 1998. That photo on the left is of me and my mom shortly after coming home from the hospital. And you can see wires poking out of my onesie, because for the first stint of my life, I was being constantly monitored for apnea. As I grew up, I experienced a variety of seemingly insidious, seemingly unrelated health problems, frequent infections, strange injuries that didn't seem to heal, easy bruising, bouts of vomiting, growing pains that outlived my growth spurts. You know, these pieces all would eventually line up in hindsight. I also grew up a dancer. I have been dancing since before I can even have memory of dancing. I would spend hours in the studio every single day. And as I got older, I started experiencing syncope and chronic pain and fatigue as I was dancing, but the love runs deep. So I worked through it. And I graduated from high school at the top of my class. I was members of National Honor Society and Student Council. I was dancing 20 plus hours a week my senior year. So, you know, relatively speaking, I was healthy. When I went away to college at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia, which was over 500 miles away from my hometown in Ohio, I quickly got involved in just about every club that would fit in my schedule. I was planning on double majoring in neuroscience and dance. You know, I like to keep myself busy. At some point during my sophomore year, I got mono and I never got better. I couldn't leave my dorm room. I was sleeping 18 hours a day. I definitely wasn't dancing at the caliber that I had been used to for my entire life. And there's a grief that comes with that, as I'm sure y'all know. I couldn't concentrate in the classes that I did go to, and was losing weight and became a version of myself that I just didn't recognize. Frankly, I went to specialist after specialist, and most of the time I was met with disbelief and sort of an us versus them every time I would go to see a doctor, and they just weren't necessarily viewing me as an expert on my own body and my own experiences. Thankfully, after a lot of self-advocacy and thanks to a referral to a geneticist who I actually found through a support group, like an online support group similar to Genetic Alliance, I was able to get the genetic testing I needed and find an answer. I was diagnosed with a mitochondrial disease in April of 2019. So for those who aren't familiar, mitochondrial disease is an umbrella term to describe a collection of genetic conditions that occurs when the structures that produce energy for the cell do not function. Mitochondria are unable to properly convert the nutrients we take in, like food and oxygen, to usable forms of energy. So as y'all might remember from a high school biology class or two, the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. So I kind of think of mitochondrial disease as a phone battery that can't be charged to 100% and that loses its charge more quickly than other phone batteries. And symptoms typically affect the entire body, as every organ system requires energy to function. So what this means for me, I was actually diagnosed with a form of mitochondrial disease called mitochondrial encephalopathy, lactic acidosis, and stroke-like episodes. And that is a mouthful, so I will happily shorten it to MELAS. But what this means for me is I am at an increased risk for stroke-like episodes. I experience painful and dangerous levels of lactic acid in my blood. So lactic acid is the chemical that builds up when you exercise and you get those sore muscles. But for me, that builds up when I'm feeling under the weather or I don't get enough sleep, things like that. I also have hearing loss and brain fog and chronic fatigue. I have abnormal blood sugars, GI problems, dysautonomia, you know, a constellation of symptoms. And I say all of that to sort of illustrate the number of healthcare providers that I have interacted with in my time, and the many puzzle pieces that doctors questioned how they fit together. Those suddenly fell into place. You know, I will also say that I feel very lucky to have been diagnosed within 2 years after the start of my most severe symptoms. Being able to navigate these systems, in being able to wade through the medical jargon, in being able to insist on a second opinion. All of these interactions is really where I first recognized the power of words and the power that healthcare providers' words had on patients. So with spending all this time with different healthcare providers, I often felt like I was being dismissed as symptoms being in my head, that there was nothing to be done, that I didn't have a quarterback, that I was being my own quarterback on top of being a student and having a chronic illness and all of these other pieces. So I found genetic counseling at the end of my college career, and it immediately felt like home. It felt like an opportunity to be what I needed during my diagnostic odyssey. I think it's human nature to want to be known and to be understood. And I really hope that as a genetic counselor, I am able to use those personal experiences to color my practice and center patients as the experts. During my time in genetic counseling school, I have really focused on understanding the diverse perspectives of patients with genetic conditions. And ultimately, this is culminating in my research project that I hope will empower patients and amplify disabled voices. Now, all of that being said, I do want to talk a little bit about the research that I've done thus far. And for context, I know that this is an audience that doesn't necessarily need to hear it. I'm sure y'all understand, but this is why this research is important. 25% of Americans are disabled or have a disability. The disability community is one of the largest, if not the largest, minority population, and it is the only minority population that anyone can become a part of at any time. So disability issues matter, and they matter to us all. And that is why I want to shed light in a systematic, scientific way on disability issues. I do want to give a quick history lesson to frame this as well. Now, before the beginning of this little timeline, I cannot not acknowledge the long history of, one, disabled people existing. Disabled people did not start to exist in 1993 when Franklin Delano Roosevelt became president and was the first president with a visible disability. Disabled people have always been around, and it's important to acknowledge the eugenics and the erasure of disabled people in our history and the medical and research distrust that has come from that. So I want to take this time to express my deepest desires as a researcher, as a future health professional, to do better. I'm not going to go through this entire timeline, but I do want to point out the 1975 Education for All Handicapped Children Act that was established to provide access to public education for all children, regardless of ability. Interestingly, it was later renamed as the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, or IDEA, in 1990. Also in 1990, the Americans with Disability Rights Act, or the ADA, established equal access to employment and public accommodations, and a 2008 amendment later clarified the definition of disability to be more inclusive. So even in this legislature, even in a very literal sense, language about disability changed, and we can see that here. During my preliminary research about disability and about how we talk about disability has evolved, one of the big sort of areas is the models of disability. So the moral model of disability can be traced back to the 9th century and really viewed disability as a result of sin or wrongdoing. As the healthcare system grew into the system that we know today, as medical technologies have advanced, the medical model of disability emerged. And this model says that disability is a problem to be fixed through medical intervention, and that quote unquote normal quality of life cannot be obtained with a disability. Now, with the disability rights movement, the social model of disability emerged. And in this model, disability is neutral and really acknowledges the ableist infrastructure of society. It acknowledges the physical and social barriers a disabled person might have when attempting to participate in their community. So an example that I always use to compare the medical and social models of disability is the medical model might say that a wheelchair user who is going out to a restaurant for dinner with her friends and can't get in because of the step up into the restaurant cannot access that space because of her disability, because she's a wheelchair user. While the social model of disability might say that she cannot access that space because there's no ramp into the restaurant, that the building is not accessible to her disabilities. And recently, particularly with the growth of social media, the identity model of disability has started to emerge, and this model integrates disability into a person's identity. It acknowledges the many intersections that we have in our own identities. My identity as someone with a disability is colored by my experience as a woman, as a queer person, as a student, as a healthcare worker. All of those things are inextricable from one another. And the identity model ultimately frames disability as diversity. Another important area that I want to talk about is the differences between person-first and identity-first language. Language about disability can perpetuate harmful stereotypes and reinforce negative attitudes about those who are disabled or have a disability. And these uses of language are kind of framed in contrast to one another. I might argue that there's more nuance to that, but the identity first language would say, for example, disabled person, while person first says a person with a disability. The identity first language was born out of the medical model of disability, but has recently been reclaimed by some members of the disability community through that identity model. An example of identity first language that is widely accepted and insisted upon by the community is the deaf community. For example, they do not only share a hearing impairment, they share culture and language and history. For person-first language, which evolved alongside the social model of disability, though they are not necessarily mutually exclusive, it again says someone with a disability rather than a disabled person, and aims to center individuals with disabilities and minimize stigmatizing terms regarding their disabilities. This is a cultural reframing to view people with disabilities as individuals who have identities that extend beyond their disabilities. Now, anecdotally, this is where I kind of gained my interest. I have my feet, I have one foot in the academic sense and one foot in my own self-advocacy and participation in the disability community. And academically, many healthcare training programs strictly enforce person-first language as the gold standard. Scientific journals have turned away publications for not using person-first language. Government documents widely use person-first language. And of course, you know, this sprinkling of antiquated medical jargon that persists in our literature, in our practice. And I noticed that this existed somewhat in contrast to what I was experiencing in real life on social media, particularly. I think it's a space where these conversations are outpacing the literature that we have. And there has been a reclamation of terms by certain communities. A non-disability community example that I think of is the word queer in the LGBTQ community, a word that was once a slur, that was once derogatory, being reclaimed by the community as a sense and point of empowerment. And I think that this nuance exists, but has not been widely documented in the scientific literature. So that is really my motivation for putting our money where our mouth is, putting the numbers behind what we're seeing. The language evolution is always happening, and it will change from here, but I am very interested in capturing what it looks like today. And so that is where my research proposal comes in and where y'all come in. A battle cry of the disability community is nothing about us without us. So I wanted to come here today and bring y'all in with me. So my research proposes to better understand disability language preferences through a community-centered lens. I'm partnering with Genetic Alliance to launch a survey on the Luna research platform for engaging everyone responsibly. And I hope that this will be a place where everyone can feel heard and feel like they are a part of the research that extends beyond our community into practice, into training, and has a more far extending reach. So the goals of my study are first to compare disability language preferences between those who are personally diagnosed and those who are disability advocates. I also hope to explore the language preferences that and those nuances that exist within the community. And ultimately, I want to underscore the sociocultural evolution that we're seeing with that supporting scientific literature. And I hope that at the end of the day, this will ultimately improve best practices in healthcare, in genetic counseling, beyond genetic counseling, and in our service to this community that we serve every single day. And this is where I ask for your help. First, you are more than welcome to participate directly by taking the disability language survey on the Luna Peer platform. This survey should take about 15 minutes to complete and consists of multiple choice and open-ended questions about language preferences on disability terms. For my community leaders in the audience, you can also adopt the survey for your community to have access to it and share your community's perspective. Of course, you are more than welcome to share the survey and this presentation on social media. I would love to see this be as far-reaching as possible. I know that the disability community, as I already mentioned, is a big one, and I would love to have as diverse of a study population as possible. And you are more than welcome to reach out to me as well. I'm always happy to discuss further on a one-on-one basis, and I want to hear your perspective. And I do see a chat. Oh, good. Thank you, Debbie. Fantastic. Now, the criteria for participating in my study is, let's see if I can, there we go. You must either identify as disabled or having a disability or be a disability advocate. For the purposes of this study, we're using the terms disabled and disability to describe instances in which someone manages a physical, mental, or emotional condition or impairment to life activities. I could use the ADA definition of disability. There are so many definitions of disability, and ultimately that definition is in the eye of the beholder. So we really invite anyone who has a health condition that influences how they interact with the world to participate. If you feel like you have something to share, then I want to hear from you. Disability advocates and activists are also eligible to participate in this study, whether you're a healthcare provider, a parent, sibling, or partner of someone with a disability, teacher, caregiver, carrier of a genetic condition. Really, the eligibility is wide open. Of course, you must be 18 years old or older to participate, and you are welcome to complete the survey with assistance if that is what is most accessible to you. You must be able to read and understand English with or without assistance, and you must live in the United States to participate in this study. So the study is going to be launched here probably in the next week or so. So if this is something that y'all are interested in participating in, if this is something you're interested in disseminating to your networks, I would love to connect with you. And in return, we will be sharing this data for condition-specific results for those genetic alliance communities that participate, as well as global results prior to the publication of my manuscript. And fingers crossed that we will have open access publication down the line that I will be able to share the published manuscript with y'all as well. And that is about all I have. I see a couple of folks in the chat as well. Will there be an option for telephone survey collection for those who have technology barriers? Admittedly, that is something that I had not previously considered. However, it is something that I will take to the drawing board and attempt to make as accessible as possible. Sharon, do you have any experience with that?
A lot, yeah. So the disease my kids have in the community that I run for them, about 80% are blind or low vision. And so what we do is we do manage those on the phone for them. So Megan, what you and I will decide is how much you'll do that and how much folks like Georgia, who's on the line from Genetic Alliance, will take care of doing those surveys. We've done them quite a lot that way. You know, it is our dear hope that we can get enough funding eventually to have the whole platform very accessible in every way that's possible. But the cost of technology is really quite astounding when you get to making this right and not just doing it sort of more homegrown. So yes, we are able to do that.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Any other questions, comments, concerns? Again, here is my contact information. So you are more than welcome to reach out to me there. I know I'm a marinator, so things will come up for me in a couple of hours and say, oh, I wish I had talked about that. But so you're more than welcome to reach out there. Our IRB is through UNCG, yes.
And I'll just add that the platform itself is the only platform in the world that's IRB approved as a platform. So the UNC IRB approval of the survey is on top of the Genetic Alliance IRB. We've had an IRB since 2003 approval of the platform.
I don't know if I can jump in and just say to Megan, thank you for your presentation. A lot sounded familiar because my daughter is Emily Ladow, and she's the author of Demystifying Disability, What to Know, What to Say, and How to Be an Ally. So when I got this email, I was very excited to be able to participate and access my community for disability, which is Larson syndrome. So yeah, that was just my comment that I wanted to make.
Thank you so much, and thank you. I do feel like I'm in the presence of disability activism royalty. So it's great to have you on the call, and I am so glad that you're able to join, and I look forward to continuing to collaborate.
Thank you. I'll pass that comment on to my daughter.
And Debbie, yes, I can share these slides as well. So we'll have the recording, and I can also share a copy of the slide deck.
Yeah, and Debbie, all of Genetic Alliance's webinars are put into our webinar library, and so you'll be able to access this webinar from there as well.
Thank you very much. This was a wonderful presentation, and I appreciate all that you're doing for communities that are affected by disability. Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, so just a couple logistical things. Megan put her email in the chat, and you can reach out to Megan directly. You also can reach out to me. I'll be happy to connect you to to Megan and to the survey. The way I want to make one point of clarification, thanks Megan for bringing up that we can give back community results as well as global results, as long as we either have a referral code that we give you, which we have, I mean, that's part of the system, or the other opportunity here is for you to set up your organization on the platform. Then your logo appears on the survey. It obviously is attributed to Megan and to her work at UNCG, but then you will have your community and can manage it, so to speak, on the platform. And then it's very easy for Megan when she goes into what's called the workbench, where the analysis is done, for her to see your organization separate from other organizations as the conduit, as the sponsor of the survey. So both can be done, though. You can just give out a URL that Megan will be distributing, or I'll be distributing, and you can just invite people that way. We'll be distributing that URL very widely, or you can set up your organization. Very simple. Basically, you give Georgia the name of your organization, and she sets you up in a day or so. And in the case of communities that do want to get set up, then you can add other surveys from our library. We have about 1,000 surveys in the library, all of the validated instruments from NIH. Those can be pulled in. And so, for example, you could do the demographic survey or the family history survey in addition to what Megan is working on. And then you can parse this data yourself later if you wish. The platform also connects to 700,000 EHR portals in the United States. And so you can ask your participants to connect their EHR, and it's connected in perpetuity. So their records come in from all of the different portals that they're connected to, because as Megan mentioned for herself, individuals who are affected by a condition often have many specialists. And so this allows both the individual to see all their records in one place, as well as when you're doing analysis or deep dive research later, you can look at those medical records in conjunction with any patient-reported outcomes and with the survey, and any other kinds of genomic and genetic information. All is contained in the platform. So there's a lot of possibility there. Obviously, Megan is doing this as part of her genetic counseling program, and we're helping Megan by finding advocacy organizations like yours. It's very important, obviously, that this that she get a wide variety of individuals who have been affected by genetic conditions or even other non-genetic conditions, so that she can get some good data here to look at this issue that's near and dear to her heart.
I have one question. Will your research be able to accommodate, well, maybe accommodate isn't the right word, but recognize that there are people who don't have specific terms for their identity, that they go back and forth, you know, like in some situations I might refer to myself as a person with a disability, and other times I just say I'm a disabled person. So in your language, person first or identity first language, some people, you know, vary it up. So how will you handle that in the research?
Great question. Yeah, so this survey is kind of set up in two parts, where the first part is more discrete questions about preference, and ultimately we will ask individuals to answer based on what they use most. I too tend to go back and forth, so there is also a extended response portion of the survey where you're welcome to share those thoughts and that perspective in a more open-ended way, to make sure that we are capturing that nuance in a mixed methods sort of style.
Yeah. And is it how we personally refer, or do we bring in also how other people have referred to us? Like, I know my daughter has several times been called the wheelchair person. So, which is a difficult, way to be identified.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the majority of the questions are getting at personal preference. However, in those extended responses as well, there is a couple of questions about how healthcare providers and other individuals in your life have interacted with that language as well.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Megan, I want to say thank you for both modeling what we need to be doing around, for example, the captions on your slides. And that might even be something you want to share with people how you did, because there's lots of us that would like to do that. Zoom can do it, but it's not very good. And yours was actually quite clear.
Oh, good. It was actually the first time that I've used the captions in PowerPoint as well. So I'm glad that it is working well. Yeah, I'll be happy to do that with you.
Great, super. And the other thing I'll say is it's an interesting thing, and I've worked with a lot of genetic counseling students who kind of go back and forth between, do I bring myself forward in this way in a professional experience? And it's even one that I had a lot of kind of journey around, in the sense that some of us who want to be recognized in a professional way may decide not to share something. And I've worked with students who've decided not to share that this really passionate, wonderful article they've written about ovarian cancer is about themselves, but they're not ready to come out because of the way the world is around a variety of things. And so I appreciate the balance you brought to that, because your story certainly is a way. I believe we all humans need to connect with each other on a human level first, and then do the work, and that actually it's all a continuum and we artificially separate it. So I appreciate that you wove those together in a beautiful way that doesn't do the kind of, well, overboard on the personal stuff, because then we never get to the other stuff that might be of interest to the community and advance some of these issues. And on the other hand, not just making this about what your research is and what the community might need, and minimizing your own self and your own self-expression and your own self-care. So all that is a fabulous balance, one that took some of us decades to learn, and you've been on this planet a short time. So I really appreciate that. In you.
I appreciate that. That means a lot to me. It's definitely a balance to strike, and I'm learning every day. So I'm very thankful to have this platform to be able to do both.
Wonderful. And thanks to your program. Yes. Thanks, Rachel and Lauren, for all that you guys are doing at UNCG. Really terrific to work with one of your students this way.
So great to partner with y'all, Sharon. Thanks so much.
Wonderful. Okay, so we will have Megan's survey up soon. She's working hard on that part, because in addition to all the kind of really exciting stuff about research like this, there's also the technical pieces about learning how to do branching and make sure that it works and test it and so on. This will be up very shortly, and then Megan will be back to each of you. I have your email addresses, and then anybody else you want to send this off to, we will be sending out the URL. I think today this webinar will post. So we'll be sending this out so that you can also get involved. All right. Thanks everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you all so much.
Bye.
Bye.